Let's look at two examples that cover our special cases when thinking about absolute value inequalities. So on our first example, before we can do anything else, we need to isolate our absolute value. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3 from both sides. So I have the opposite of the absolute value of x minus 2 is greater than 4 minus 3 is 1. And then I still need to get that absolute value by itself. You can think of that as a -1 out in front. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1. Be careful here. Remember, when you divide in any kind of inequality by a negative value, it flips the inequality symbol. So our greater than symbol is going to become a less than symbol. 1 divided by -1 is -1. So think carefully about this statement. This is saying that the absolute value of some quantity is less than -1. But we know that absolute value represents a distance, and distance cannot be negative. So whatever the absolute value of x minus 2 is it's something positive. So when is something positive less than -1? It's never going to be less than -1. So because of this, this is impossible, and there is no solution. A lot of times in the homework system, we'll write that as DNE, or does not exist. The reason that we're doing that is if we think about it, we know that the absolute value of x minus 2 is going to be some positive number, whatever it is. So any value for x that you plug in, when you take x minus 2 and then take the absolute value, it's something positive. Less than -1 is impossible. That will never happen, which means there's no value of x that makes the original statement true. That's why we have no solutions to this. So the key here was that we had an absolute value that was less than a negative number. So when you have absolute value less than a negative number, there is no solution. We cannot rewrite as the original and opposite like we've done on other examples. There's no solution. But look at this second example here. So it's already isolated the absolute value of 3x minus 7, but this time it's a greater than a negative number. Well, whatever the absolute value of 3x minus 7 is, it's something positive. So this time, if we think about it, whatever it is, it's some positive number when we take that absolute value. When will a positive number be greater than -5? Well, this is always going to happen. Whatever the positive number is, it will always be greater than a negative number. So because of this, any value for x that you plug in will give us a true statement. So if every single value of x gives us a true statement, then our solution is going to be all real values. So when you see an absolute value inequality with a negative on the other side, we need to stop and think carefully. Sometimes there's no solution. That's going to happen if you have a less than symbol. But sometimes we're going to have an infinite number of solutions, the set of all real values. That's going to happen when we have a greater than symbol. So an absolute value will never be less than a negative, but it will always be greater than a negative. So look carefully at the symbol as you think about what your solution will be.